So over 7 years, I painted only birds. I mean, I think creativity is a substance that exists in your brain.
What do you contribute to the society with your art?
Magic. Magic. I spoke to a group of university students last week. Who here has never used AI? Fats has just been like, let's just keep it simple. Fats. I was like, oh, there's too many fats. Pick a word and slap it on the end. And I was driving a Nissan Patrol.
Okay, we have Fathima Mohiuddin, third culture kid artist, muralist, little bit of graffiti, but not the main thing.
Not the main thing, no.
Mm-hmm. So how it started? Tell us something about little bit about your background.
I mean, when it comes to drawing, because for me, essentially everything is drawing. At the end, it's the fundamental. I started drawing probably when I was around 4 years old, maybe younger, because my brother is a cartoonist and he's older. So when I was born, I was already born into his world. He was reading comic books, he was drawing. I just followed him around and copied everything he was doing, and eventually I found my own direction with it. But yeah, art has been in my life always.
Mm-hmm. You can say it's in the family since your brother, but I believe your parents were not involved in this.
No,
things.
it's not in the family. There's nobody else. That's why my mom always loves to say, oh, I don't know how I gave birth to 2 children who are artists. I can't draw a straight line. And she says the same thing every time. But there was like a poetic way of thinking. My mom was a French and English teacher. She loved Urdu poetry. She loved black and white movies. She loved this really black and white moonlight curtains, like, I don't know, drama and poetry.
Mm-hmm. So, what actually, what incited you to do drawing apart from your brother? There was that urge.
Always. I think it's because I've been someone who never fits anywhere. I don't fit in my culture. I don't fit in my family's religion. I don't fit in the country that I'm from. And sometimes I don't fit in the country that I was born in, which is here in the UAE. So art and drawing for me is a way to find my own voice, something that is authentic to who I am rather than what society expects me to be, I think, yeah.
And then you started, and I mean, did you study? Or
I did, yeah. I went to the University of Toronto. I did a degree in fine art and cultural theory. And then I did my master's in sociology. But for me, I always had a preoccupation with understanding the larger social implication of what you choose to do with your life. My grandparents were social workers. My grandmother was a sex counselor for like underprivileged people in villages in India. And my grandfather worked for the WHO. So we were raised to always think about other people and have perspective and think about what you do and how it implies something bigger. And I always knew that, of course, art doesn't feed people. It doesn't heal wounds physically, but I truly, deeply believe that it has a really important purpose and role in the world.
mhm. Uh, the French writer Marcel Proust, your mother maybe would know him. He said once that creating inspiration, whatever urge to work as an artist, I mean, writers, artists, they all are creative people. They all are, in fact, artists or composers. He said that urge comes when the person is suffering, either physically or mentally. Can you relate to? As a writer, I can relate to it. I can make the link. But I mean, as an artist, do you make that link? Do you feel that?
I mean,
link?
when I was younger, because when I was 14, I was diagnosed with depression and an anxiety disorder. So at that time, definitely, there was suffering, and this was the only way that I could process and make sense of the things that I was experiencing. And I was so young, and I was put on medication. And I think when I was younger, I glorified the idea of the tortured artist. You have to be unwell. You have to be, I loved Jackson Pollock, was an
Yeah, that's what he
alcoholic.
said
And,
actually.
but as I got older, I was like, but is this really the life that I'm choosing? I'm actually glorifying being mentally unwell because I think it's going to make me an artist. And it was one of my many therapists over the years who was like, but what if you could be happy and still make good art? What if you could live a joyful life and still make good art? Uh, and I think that's where I started tapping into the larger function of what art can do. You know, I've worked on a lot of projects around the world on the street, in public, or with children. And that's about love and joy in the face of devastation and sadness and grief and pain and suffering. So that was quite a large shift for me because I realized to live with pain for me was not sustainable. I was going to go over the edge. So I had to find another way.
And why muralist?
You know, people always ask me why I like to make things that are so big. And I say it's because when I was a child, I always felt really small. So I was very shy. I was very nervous. I was very unsure of myself. You know, as like a small Indian girl, I didn't have long, nice hair. I had darker skin. Like literally nothing about me was appropriate or ticking any boxes. I was a bad Muslim child. I was, you know, I went to India. I wasn't really properly Indian. Um, yeah, murals are a way of communicating with the world in your own voice and saying, I am here and this is my voice and it's this big. Um, it's just the grand, I love scale. Like I love to be able to say that someone so small can do something so big. But also I love public space. I've had some of the most sort of like human and grounding experiences of my life painting on the street, talking to homeless people, talking to people with addiction problems, or talking to a banker who has a really monotonous life and is suddenly interrupted by walking past a mural. So I think the murals are, or art in public spaces in general, is a really literal manifestation of how important art is to human existence.
Uh, I saw some of your works on your Instagram. Uh, Huge buildings, huge murals. You once, I think, you even used, maybe not once, the sliding ladder that
Yeah.
firefighters
Yeah.
use. So it actually, I mean, takes lots of courage to climb and do something.
Yeah, I mean, the tallest building I've worked on is probably 9 stories. I work on boom lifts, and you know, sometimes you're up there for the whole day, and there's like it's sweat, but you feel like a bird. Like you, when you have anxiety, I have a lot of friction between myself and the world around me all the time. Whether it's politics, whether it's media, whether it's like people trying to sell you things or people trying to manipulate you. Like I just feel so when I go outside my house or when I leave the safety of my place, it's a battlefield. And so when I get into the machine and I push the button and I just go up, it's like flying away. It's like going to sit up on a windowsill like a bird and look down and feel safe.
That's why you have some lots of birds in your art. So
Yeah.
is it kind of some symbol of freedom or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, birds, I started painting birds about 12 years ago. I had just left a really bad abusive relationship and I was very broken in my spirit. And my cat went outside, caught a bird, and came inside. And I felt so horrible for this bird, but I also was like, I feel like this bird, just broken, destroyed, ruined. And so over 7 years, I painted only birds. And it was like such an important symbol to help me find resilience, flight, freedom, migration. Like it helped me address a lot of really important themes in my life. Um, and of course, birds have like a universality across cultures. They are a very potent symbol. But the time of birds has passed now since I think 2020. I've had quite a big shift away from birds.
So you healed. Good to know that. You're working on different projects, commercial projects, right? And something, let's say, for the soul. So how do you get inspiration? Do you get inspiration when you work on commercial projects, or you need just a clear plan to follow, or you still need inspiration for both?
Well, with commercial projects, I really had to, over time, figure out where my boundaries are. What am I willing to do for money? What am I willing to compromise as a creative person? Because for me, being an artist is not just a thing I do, it's a way I move through the world, and it's a way I see the world. It's a way of being. And how much of that are you sort of willing to compromise for money? Commercial projects can be really interesting. They challenge you to do things you wouldn't normally do. For me, they challenge me to use colors I hate to use.
Yeah, I've noticed that you don't use much
I
colors
don't use
in.
much color. But I don't mind the commercial projects as long as the client has an understanding that I'm not a printer or a graphic designer. You're hiring me for the way I see things and perceive things. So
Take it or leave it.
take it or leave it. Yeah. If you give me a picture of a skyline and ask me to paint it, there's absolutely no way. I will I will go teach some children art instead.
Or you might do it your way,
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
you see it. So it's true when they say that's the way the artist sees it. So, I mean, there
Yeah.
is no bargain here.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you done any projects in Dubai, UAE, or abroad?
Many over the years. There's a falcon who lives, for me, they're all like characters and people. There's a falcon who lives downtown. He's been there for a while now, maybe 7 years. On Yas Island, I have some of my biggest projects. There's 7 buildings covered in birds. That was my big finale for the birds. And then there's another project on this big round building called the Humans. There's lots of small venues around the city that have my work in them. Yeah.
Let's go back to your upbringing. How did it influence your art? Like, I mean, being a Muslim, Islamic culture, calligraphy, all these things had an influence. It affected your art in a good way.
I think so. I mean, the the good side of it is that I had so much visual language in my world to be influenced by, because people will always try to nail down, oh, you're influenced by this, and I'm like, I can honestly not tell you one single thing I'm influenced by, because that's not how our brains work. Like, we are sponges and we absorb information, and then who knows what happens between our layers of consciousness to then process it and come out the way it looks. So a lot of people will say, oh, it looks like tribal art, or it looks like graffiti, or it looks like comic books. But I love that as well. I love that there's an ambiguity to it. But if I said in terms of influences, obviously comics. I loved writing Arabic when I was younger. So I love anything that's line based. I love to sit on our Indian bedspreads and carpets and tracing the lines, tracing the flowers. Some of the earliest things I did was to copy patterns from our bed sheets onto all the furniture in my bedroom. My bedroom is where everything just, my mom would wake up in something else. I had painted the furniture, or I had painted the walls, or I had dyed the carpets, or, I was just a little mouse in my bedroom painting everything black, really.
Black is not bad.
No.
Uh, who is your inspiration in art? Do you have any role model?
Um, I've always find this question really hard, because people always have like a name instantly. I don't. For me, I'm more interested in artisans in India, like tribal art or primeval art, or the way humans were making marks before colonization or before language, like how we have this instinctual, innate desire to express and make marks and make our presence known. I feel like that's what I'm more interested in. Um, as a child, I used to spend my summers in India with my grandparents, and they always made sure we were exposed to a lot of like woodwork and kalamkari and, all these really traditional Indian. And I think for me, that was a lot more inspiring. Just the fact that everything was made by your hands and everything is art. And, I can have a real struggle sometimes with how we can take something and elevate it so much that it belongs in this status that is no longer relevant to where it came from. Whereas, yeah, I think in India, everything is art, like, and it's accessible and available to everybody. It's creative and beautiful. There's beauty in everything.
In fact, muralism, if I can say so, murals, it's a very, very old, ancient art.
Hmm.
Our forefathers used to draw on the walls of their caves. And then later on also, I mean, take Michelangelo for instance. He was also doing that wall things and ceiling. So how is it different, the modern muralism and the old one? I mean, what do you think? What what was inspiring those people to do so, and what is inspiring modern people to do so?
I mean, part of it was function. In the past, there were art. I mean, these are, with the little bit of knowledge I have, there would be patrons who would commission artists to adorn. It was a representation of status. But again, this is just the Western understanding we have of the history of painting murals. Because if you go, when I was a child in the 80s, you saw paintings on the walls in India everywhere. And sometimes it was like Hindu gods, sometimes it was politicians, sometimes it was movie posters. So again, it was just functional. It was just information and public broadcast, but it was still hand painted and really creative and talented. Graffiti has a different place in this whole narrative because graffiti, from what I know, was sort of born in like in New York, in Brooklyn, and it was really an act of sort of rebellion and claiming space and going against the system and it wasn't about art. It was about making your presence known, claiming public space, and challenging the system and the status quo. So, and then now we have street art, which is its own kind of thing that's married a little bit of graffiti with a little bit of history of mural, with a bit of actually very commercial conversations as well. So, and muralism now is more about adornment to some extent. It's about changing public space. But we run the risk where if we commercialize it too much, if we normalize it too much, it's losing the way that it can impact those public spaces because it's just becoming something that's pretty and it's not saying anything anymore. So that's partly why I've sort of taken a step back a little bit from street art because I don't want to just paint things that look nice.
You said about India. I've seen in India, uh, they actually, they had drawings of their Hindus, of their gods on walls, and people would come and pay some tribute, pray or whatever. So that's interesting, really. In India, I mean, everything is possible. Anyways, let's go to street art. Let's go to graffiti. You must know Banksy,
Hmm.
right? So, what do you think about it? He's famous for his statements. I mean, his art is a statement. Everything, every piece of his art is a statement. So, do you make such statements?
I mean, I think each artist has their own way of commenting on the time and the place that they live in. That is his medium, and he's very good at it. But at the same time, there'll be times where I look at my work and I'm like, oh, it's not political enough. I'm not saying enough. But if I try to speak in someone else's language or voice, then it's not authentic to my experience and it's not really saying what I need to say. So my experience has been to feel my identity challenged and to not be able to find a place where I belong. So my experience has been to find a voice and a style and a language that is purely my own and to tell personal stories. And that's relevant to my identity and my experience of life. So there's no point in me sort of comparing how I work and how I express myself to somebody else. And it took me a long time to realize that because imposter symptom is a real big thing when you're an artist.
Pablo Picasso said once, "Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up." Is it true?
It's absolutely
Can you
true.
relate to it?
I mean, I think creativity is a substance that exists in your brain. It's whether you learn to access it to mobilize it, or if you just turn the tap on for off forever. You know, people always like, oh, I can't draw. You can draw, you just don't do it. And over time you'll get better at it, but you have to do it. Obviously, some people have natural skill and natural talent, but there's enough artists out there who don't have those things, and it was just hard work and practice. But creativity is not just doing, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of seeing, it's a way you can go your whole life without making something and still be a creative and interesting artistic person. So
The same Pablo Picasso also said that it took me 4 years to paint like Raphael, but it took me a lifetime to paint like a child. So, how it feels painting like a child?
I think when we're talking about a child and creativity and art, it comes down to remembering how to play, remembering how to be curious. These are all things that we forget to do as we get older, as we settle into capitalist systems and routines and life and everything else. Play is sort of the most important component. And for me, I've developed a practice now in the last few years where I dedicate one day of every week, which is usually Sunday, to playing. Just to playing with materials, to playing with my imagination, to playing with my mind. And I think it's really important. And maybe that's why I don't look my age but I know how to play. I know how to be goofy and silly. And then I can also be a mature, responsible adult within reason when I need to. But I think play is sort of the really important component in all of that.
When I checked your Instagram, I mean, you have an impressive body of work.
Thank you.
How many are there? Have you counted the number of your works you've done?
No, because I mean, it's also, you don't know what is a piece of work. Sometimes something is just a scribble on a piece of paper. And I've sold scribbles to people. Sometimes people just want something that I've just scribbled. They're like, "Oh, that's amazing. I want it." I'm like, "Okay, you can buy that." I also give away a lot of art to people just because it just feels like that's how I'm able to share love. So I give art to a lot of my friends and family. Um, but no, there's not, I always think about maybe someday if someone tries to archive my work when I'm dead in like 50 years, where they'll find these little scribbles and doodles and stuff. But yeah, I have no idea.
You have a lot of ethnic Native American motifs. So, where it comes from?
It actually doesn't. This has been a really challenging thing for me when I lived in Canada,
Mm.
because people would say, "Oh, but your work looks Native American." This is problematic because obviously there's this whole conversation around cultural appropriation. Um, and I felt that that was a really unfortunate place to find myself, because my style has developed very organically through my life. Of course, I've been exposed to Native American art. I've been exposed to Indian folk art. I've been exposed to so many things, and I couldn't possibly pin it down to one and say this was this and it looks like this. I think there are really interesting similarities between Indigenous and you know primeval cultures and ways of expression. If you look at Aboriginal versus like Indian folk art versus, I don't know, Mayan, Incan art, Canadian West Coast, like there is actually a similarity in how people treat marks and how they treat subject matter, which I think is an interesting conversation around like the similarities between humans. I do tend to look for universals because I think the world is so divided, and that was a man, and the only way we can sort of combat that is to continue to find things that have existed and connected us before these boundaries and borders existed.
And I saw a lot of cats. I liked all your cats' works. And I even saw some writing, write up some kind of a tribute to your cat, the one Whiskey. So you can write actually.
I do write. I mean, I have one of my little books here, but I write a lot. And these days, I actually wake up around sunrise and sit in my little garden and write a little poem. My mom always wanted me to be a writer, and
Mhm.
she loves my writing. She says it's actually stronger than the drawing. It should be the main thing I do.
She's
But
more of a classic type,
yeah,
right? She's
yeah.
conservative classic. Yeah.
It took her a long time to sort of make sense of what I was doing, because the other thing is, like, I'd use black all the time, you know. So when I was younger, she's like, "Why are you so angry? Why are you so tormented? Why are you so dark?" And you know, I'm actually not. I'm actually a very sort of upbeat, goofy, cheerful person and joyous person. I'm just in touch with my own darkness, and I think that's important. But yeah, I like to write, but you know, it's more for pleasure. And the cats have just been around for a long time. I'm on number 7 now. His name is Pixel.
Yeah.
They come and
Pixel,
go.
yeah, I remember.
Pixel is 13. But they have, you know, I've moved around. I've had a lot of relationships. The cats are the constants.
I'm also a cat person, so that's why I was interested. Are you anyhow, or have you studied or interested in classic painting, classic artists? No, you don't know them.
No, not particularly. I mean, I was lucky that when I was an art student, um, my professors were working artists who weren't really interested in the classic stuff as well. So no, not particularly. There will be times sometimes where I look at my work and I'm like, oh, there's no, you know, a real classic painter might look at this and say, there's no technique. There's no, I remember in high school, art teachers would always say, you never use black, never use pure black from a tube. You should always make black with 50 other colors. And I just thought I was so stupid. I was like, but I love pure black. I want pure black. I don't want black with dimension. Um, so yeah, I've never been a rule follower really.
You must be liking Kandinsky's black.
Yeah, black for me has its power. It's not, of course, it's darkness, but it's also it's power. It's bold, and it's truthful. Like, I feel in black and white, there's nowhere to hide feelings, and I feel like color can be really manipulative sometimes because color is so emotive. You're somehow you're telling people what to feel with color, whereas black and white is like, this is it and this is it, and you find your story and your truth in it. So
If there were no darkness, there wouldn't be light. We wouldn't appreciate it. Do you have a particular style or technique in muralism? I mean, what can you, to which style or technique you can attribute your art?
I think to be honest, it comes down to the materials. Like,
Hmm.
when I was a college student, I used a lot of charcoal, and that sort of determined
Black again.
black again, and then it determined the quality of the lines. And then from charcoal, I went to markers, so those lines get clean. And then from markers, I go to spray paint, so you have clean lines with a little bit of shadow. There, for me, control is really important. Like, to be able to control a line, to be able to taper a line. I'm very proud of the way I paint. Really, you know, sometimes when I'm painting these buildings, I'm painting one straight line for like 3 stories freehand. But yeah, materials, I guess. I don't know. Influence is always a strange question for me because I work very intuitively.
So murals are actually considered as an important art because it brings art to the public, to the general public, because it's, I mean, it's visual. You can see it. People can see it. They can enjoy it, or they can maybe not accept it. So, what do you think? What your art? What do you contribute to the society with your art?
Magic. Magic.
Magic.
We need magic. You know, if you are, what I'm not saying my work specifically, but I mean murals or art in public spaces, it's unexpected. It's an encounter. You turn a corner and you didn't expect it to be there, and there's something magical that happens. Um, you know, it's a vibration that comes off a piece of art that touches you and bounces off you and affects you. So yeah, I think magic.
Mhm. Have you done any graffiti any time in your life?
Um, When I lived in London, um, in my early 20s when I was doing my master's. Because when I was doing my master's, I was studying art in public spaces. That's what I wrote my thesis on. So graffiti was a part of that. And I said, well, I should at least go out and experience this on my own. But I think, unfortunately, my identity as a woman of color made me feel more vulnerable in those situations. I had this awareness that if I got caught and I got in trouble, there was a higher chance of me being in a more uncomfortable situation because I was not a white man. Um, and that's unfortunate, but
Yeah,
that's,
it is obviously. I mean, you can imagine. Actually, the situation is really a comic situation that
yeah,
you're doing some. They are coming, catching you. Ah, you Indians, you coming here and you're doing even this. I mean, they don't even make difference between what criminals or hooligans do or what.
yep,
I mean, this is art.
yep,
But it's a good point that you brought that you felt vulnerable about it. That's really sad, especially now, seeing what's happening in London, all over the world,
yeah,
actually, to
yeah,
people of color. It's really unfortunate because they have contributed, after all. I mean, not all of them are terrorists, not all of them are hooligans or criminals. The main part is actually hardworking people who
yep.
contribute to their economies, to culture,
Culture.
to society. I
The
mean,
way people say, well, you can't just eat the food and not embrace the people,
yeah,
you know? And I think being a woman who's traveled and painted in all these countries, that became a really important. I never liked to be labeled as a woman of color or a woman artist or an Indian artist, but I realized how important that was the more I spent time painting around the world because people didn't see people who looked like me doing this thing. Um, and it was important to say that we actually do have value to bring. When I used to paint in like sort of small towns in North America, I'd go into 7-Eleven or petrol stations and I always saw Indian people working, which was always the stereotype, right? And I always thought to myself, I hope one day they're able to show what else they have to bring to a society, their voice, their culture, their way of life, their value system, how we can bring richness to a new country and not just sort of have to fall into the system and sort of disappear and not have a voice and always be grateful that you have the opportunity to live in this new country um, without being fully able to speak in your authentic culture.
uh, actually, it's good that women, I mean, are embracing those, um, professions or whatever. Uh, I mean, that only men used to do. Although I don't like when they highlight that woman. I used to cover IT, and they would have, during these IT exhibitions in Dubai, they used to have a panel, woman in IT.
Yeah.
What is woman in IT? I mean, why woman cannot be in IT? It's like, monkeys in the space, nothing surprising. I mean, what is IT that women are doing much more complicated jobs? But in your sphere of in your profession, there are not many women doing this,
There's a lot.
are they?
There's a lot of women,
But
but
not here in Dubai.
there's quite a few women here.
Few, very few.
I mean, considering the size of the scene here,
Mm.
um, the difference is between how many artists there are and how many artists we see.
Do you want to talk about domino?
You've done a lot of research into my life. Yeah. Um, so the Domino, I guess now I know what to call it. It was like a urban art curation agency. I started it when I was 27. I knew nothing about business. I just knew there was a thing I wanted to achieve for the community that I lived in. So at that point, I had been working at an art gallery. Um, and I just wanted to do more projects that somehow involved the local art scene, locally based artists, because at that point, suddenly there was a lot of people here who were making really good work and had no opportunities. And I was like, well, we shouldn't be doing things for free. People should be getting paid. So that was kind of the basis of it, is let's get artists paid, but in the process, let's have these fundamental values that preserve creative integrity. We make original work. We don't paint logos. We make sure that artists are doing something that contributes to their portfolio and gets them moving up in their career. I did it for 12 years. It was hard work. I was very young. I didn't know very much. And I was suddenly going into these big corporate meetings with developers and agencies, and I had to look like I knew what I was talking about. The good thing is I've always had the passion, and I've always had an understanding of the things I believe in. And I've always been very good at telling you this is what I believe in and it's what I stand for. But when things are super commercial, people don't necessarily care what you believe in. They want to know how cheap they can get something. They want to know how quickly they can get something. And so it was a very draining, very long, draining journey. I'm very proud of the things I achieved. I was very young, and it did a lot for a lot of young artists. We did a lot of things here for the first time. We had graffiti jams and, artist collaborations and murals. But eventually, I reached a point where I had changed as a person, and I needed to be fully dedicated to my art. So that was the end. And it was hard to close it down because it felt like, is this a
So you
failure?
closed it
I
down.
closed it down, yeah, about 3 years ago.
Was it kind of a trade union for
In
muralists?
some way, because I think I always say it was literally just me for 12 years, except for the last few years. We did set the rates early on for, hourly rates, mural rates, things like that, because none of that existed. And some of those early projects we did really, and it was also a way of introducing a voice that people weren't hearing. I used to curate the art nights at DIFC. So suddenly you're in the financial district, but you have a bunch of local artists doing something a lot more urban and edgy with markers and spray paint. And, it was a way of saying we are here too. And actually, this should be important. And that's still the conversation, is why do we still not have platforms that support local enough? And more than that, like the niche that is urban art.
So you live between Dubai and Canada.
But I did for about 6 years, yeah. I've lived in Toronto twice. The first time I was 17 when I went to university. And then the second time was I left about 8 years ago, and I came back a year and a half ago. I'm quite a restless person. And when I decide to go, I go, which really my mom finds frustrating. But, I follow my nose.
Have you done any projects in Canada?
In Canada, loads. Not in Toronto, because in Toronto I ran into the trouble with the cultural appropriation situation. But in Calgary, Red Deer, Wood Buffalo, like some very random towns, Nelson, um, Sudbury, Sault Ste., like very strange towns around the country. But it was actually quite beautiful. I mean, Canada is so beautiful. Sometimes I was just painting and then jumping in a lake and then getting out and painting. Like it was, it was pretty amazing. And that time that I sort of went away for 6 years was to reconnect with and understand where my priorities are. Like, I love nature. I don't care about having money to do things that cost a lot of money. How can I live on less and still have joy? Do I really care about happiness as a concept, or am I just someone who just wants little joys every day? So yeah, I went away to grow up a little bit.
You do digital art?
I do, yeah. I didn't used to. I you know, there was no reason to resist it, I realize now, because my brother's always used a tablet for his illustrations. And eventually Apple had asked me to come and do a demonstration at their store of the new iPad. This is when it was first introduced, the big one. And I was like, sure, I'll come and do it, but I've never used it before. So they gave me one. And it has actually significantly changed my skill level, the way I think about things. I think it's really helped me grow as an artist, to be honest. And it's given me more opportunity in what I can do. I can work in vector. I can design billboards. I can, I can do more commercial stuff.
Mhm.
Or I can work in animation. Like there's a lot of
Yeah, I was
new,
going to ask you about animation.
yeah. So I'm not against it, but now there's the whole AI thing. And I'm like, oh, just when I had gotten comfortable with digital, now there's this new thing that I have to fight with. It's, yeah.
It's horrible, isn't it? The AI is actually destroying everything. I mean, it's not only in art, in writing also.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke to a group of university students last week. I think there was like 24 of them. And I went, who here has never used AI? And I was the only person who raised my hand. Um, for me, it's not something I'm against or for or anything like that. I'm just not interested. Whenever there's hype about something and everyone's talking about, I'm not interested. I literally will go the opposite way. I see the benefits and the opportunities. I also see my fellow graphic designers, animators, illustrators, like really struggling. And then I see conversation about, the water that goes into these AI farms. And I'm like, is it really worth it? Do we really need to keep advancing and advancing? I was at this like archaeological museum in Elaine recently, and I was looking at this display of these little bowls and spears and thousands of years old. And I looked at them, I'm like, we've always had everything we need. Why do we keep chasing more? Like we literally have everything we need. We had it thousands of years ago. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's my feeling about AI.
Yeah, it depreciates actually the real art.
I mean, with AI, to be honest, I'm hoping I can use it to my advantage where AI can do the boring stuff, and then a human's art becomes the novelty. A human's true expression and emotion and vulnerability becomes the novelty. I hope so. I think so.
So you do murals, you did some graffiti, you even you decorated furniture in your bedroom. You decorate some jars also, I saw.
Yeah, the vases and the jars
Yeah,
and
the
pictures.
vases.
I love to drive. I spend a significant amount of time on the road, and I spend a lot of time driving in the mountains, especially here. I love to go to the villages. Masafi is one of my favorite places to go in the UAE. And in Masafi, you have the Iranian potters who make the terracotta vases and
Hmm.
pots. Some of them, they make them there and they bake them in the sun. It's amazing. I'm like, you're literally making it right there. Some of them they bring on boats from Iran. But I go and buy them from there. Even though I have taken pottery, I know how to make these things. I'm like, well, they sell them for, I don't know how they sustain these shops. So I would rather go for the drive, come back with a car full of pots, and then paint them, and have this much more story to the object as well.
You have even decorated yourself with tattoos.
Yes,
And it's
yeah.
again birds and cats, right?
Birds, that's my cat
Yeah.
there. Yeah, some flowers. I loved henna when I was a child, and but I never liked the smell. So I liked the smell of it when you're applying it, but as soon as you take it off and it's orange, I hated the smell, and I hated when I'd like fall asleep with my hand near my face. It's just the worst thing. And then by the time I was a teenager, I was drawing tattoos with henna.
Hmm.
And then one year I accidentally got some henna that had some chemicals in it and it burnt some of my skin. So that was the end of that. And then later on, I started using markers and doing like my whole body with markers, which, extremely toxic. And so, yeah, tattoos just seem like the natural progression to that story. It was from my mom when I was younger. She's like, if you ever get a tattoo, I'll disown you. Here we are years
She
later.
must not be liking it. Huh?
Well, I got one that's in her handwriting, which makes she loves to show people. She's like, look, that's my handwriting. So I think she's understood that they have a function. It's not just a deviant antisocial behavior, rebellious thing to do. And I think she's realized that about a lot of my behavior. It wasn't just rebellion. It was just a way of finding my own way to know who I am and express myself that feels right. Even now she'd be like, please don't get more tattoos. You have no space left on your body. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, there's so much skin, Mum.
How do you find the modern arts scene in Dubai?
I was based in Al Sarkal as a resident artist for about 8 months, and I didn't spend much time in the galleries. And I found that strange. Like, I asked myself, you are surrounded by these galleries, but you don't go into them. And it's not because I'm not interested or not because I don't like the work. It's because I really struggle with the role of the institution, and what is represented or what that institution represents. So I think, again, I feel like there is not really a place for someone like me, someone who creates work that doesn't tell you something that you're expecting. This was an issue I had in Canada as well. You're an immigrant artist, you're a woman artist, you're an Indian artist. Your work must somehow address one of these identities. You can't possibly make something that is not feminine or not. But then the part of the reason I call myself Fatspatrol is because I don't want you to know any of those things before you see the work. It's only afterwards as people will send me a message, be like, oh, I didn't realize you're a woman because your work is not feminine and your work doesn't tell me where you're from. So I think that's maybe something that we do see a lot of here, is like it's still connected to the identity of the person and the expectation of that identity. And but there's beautiful things, and it's amazing to see. Now I am an older generation artist in this city. There's a younger generation coming up and taking all the work. Um, but people finding their own voices, that's what it should be.
Why Fatspatrol?
So Fatspatrol, my friends call me Fats. That's I have, for some reason, I've always had a lot of people in my life who couldn't say my name properly. And actually, you said it very nicely. But when I went to Canada, people would say Fatima, which I don't know why it was really annoying. Or Fatima, or, it's just, and to be honest, I didn't always know the way it was supposed to be said because I grew up in an Arabic country where it's Fatima. But I'm an Indian Muslim, so we say Fatima. And then my name is spelled a little bit differently as well. So Fats has just been like, let's just keep it simple, Fats. And then when I was setting up my Instagram account, I was like, oh, there's too many Fats. There's actually a lot of graffiti writers called Fats. And my friend was in the car and he was like, you need another word. Just pick a word and slap it on the end. And I was driving a Nissan Patrol. And that's it. But also what's interesting is it's become a way to tell people about the place I grew up. Because when I'm in, I don't know, like painting a mural in Utah, people are like, what's Fatspatrol? What's patrol? I'm like, oh, patrol is this car that we drive in the desert. Dubai is not just yachts and brunch and glamour and gold. There are people who go out into the desert and love nature and contribute to this alternative conversation about preserving archaeological sites in Maliha or, stuff like that. So I still drive a patrol and I drive in the desert and I spend a lot of time camping. And yeah, it's been a nice way to say this. Everything you expect about this place is not what it seems. People say I'm not the kind of person you would expect to have come out of a city like this, but yeah, so that's Fatspatrol.
Third culture kid.
Third culture kid. But also Fatspatrol is ambiguous. Again, it doesn't tell you where I'm from, what my gender is, what my age is, nothing. It's, it's just strange.
Fathima Mohiuddin, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.